Thank you. Thank you both very much for being here and for your testimony. I think it's very clear that part of Russia's strategy is not just what they're doing in terms of military buildup and interference in Eastern Europe, but also their effort to undermine our democratic processes as they did in the United States. It's very clear that they interfered in our election. So what other steps can we take to address that kind of interference? Are the sanctions, in your view, are the sanctions helpful? Should we ratchet those up? Are there other actions that we should take? And should we be working with Europe as we look at Russia's attempts to interfere in the French and German elections? And also, I want to ask you separately about the Balkans, but maybe I can ask you to start with that.
Well, thank you, Senator. I do think that Congress should reimpose the sanctions legislatively. I think we should certainly maintain what already exists, but go above and beyond it, working with our European allies. But first and foremost, we really need to establish the facts of what exactly transpired last fall. We need a much more public discussion of this. A lot of it remains classified. Our public deserves to know, our allies need to know as they prepare for these elections. As was noted earlier, there will be several elections in Europe next year. The signals we're getting from those allies is that they're already seeing a spike in Russian cyber activity. And so first and foremost, we need to establish what happened last fall and do our very best to determine from that set of facts how we will then prevent and deter attacks in the future, both on our system and on the system of our European allies.
General Breedlove.
Senator, thank you. And if I might, it's not going to sound very military, but part of what happens here is Russia puts out a lot of disinformation that they really don't care whether learned people seeing as being false. They're appealing to groups of people who want to believe them in the first place in many of these countries. And what I haven't seen among the Western nations who are under this attack is a strong, unified voice of indignation, outrage, and to bring force to this. We see parcel penny packet responses that don't come strongly either in a policy sense or in just a public message sense. And I think that the West, who is under attack here, needs to bring this together to out the behavior and then try to erode that base of people that want to believe them.
I couldn't agree more with both of you, and I think it is very sad and disappointing that this Congress has not acted more forcefully to make public, in a much broader sense, what we know about what happened and to take action to address it. So I appreciate that Chairman Corker and Ranking Member Cardin have talked about the importance of an investigation, but an investigation that goes on for the next 2 years is not an investigation at all. It's an effort to obstruct what happened. And sadly, what we're seeing from the White House is support for that kind of obstruction. So I hope we will take action and do it in a way that's very forceful. With respect to the Balkans, we're also seeing Russian interference in the Balkans in a way that is much in a situation where we have countries that are not as established in terms of their democratic processes. So can you talk about whether we should be looking separately at what's going on there, and is there particular support you think we should be giving to some of our friends in the Balkans?
Well, Senator, you're right, thank you, to point out the vulnerabilities that one finds in this corner of Europe. These are, in many ways, embryonic democratic systems that do have vulnerabilities like our own system. And we've already seen some very blatant attempts on the part of the Russians to undermine the political processes. I believe it was Senator Cardin that mentioned earlier the specific case of Montenegro. There have been just blatant attempts to overthrow governments in this part of Europe. And I agree with General Breedlove. Our strongest asset right now is transatlantic resolve and unity in calling this out. And frankly, we don't have that right now. And until we get that, we will not be able to come at Russia from a position of strength with common transatlantic positions and tools and support those young, frail democracies in places like the Balkans.
Thank you. Senator-
Again, I join
Senator
those
Breedlove.
remarks. I think that we have made huge investment in this part of the world, and some of the things that we value the most in democratic institutions have a real chance. We should not now wither from the task. And again, I think there is a lack of a strong, broad European voice because there are some nations that are backing away from it a little bit in order not to provoke Russia and others. And I think we need a strong, unified Western and European voice to put this right in the Balkans.
Thank you both.
If I could, just for the record, I feel the same way you do about making sure we do this quickly. I don't think you intended to say that Ben and I are stonewalling an investigation.
No. What I intended to say was that I appreciate the fact that you all have come out in support of doing an investigation.
Good. And actually, trying to coordinate, although it's been very difficult, with other committees that have jurisdiction to make sure that this does not take a long time but happens in a very speedy way and goes from the beginning to the end. I knew you didn't intend that. I just want to make sure the record indicated
And, Mr.
that.
Chairman, can I point out that under your leadership, the chairman and ranking members of the relevant committees are meeting in order to share information about what every committee is doing, and I thank you for coordinating the work.
But if I could, Mr. Chairman, just to try to be more clear, I do think there are principals and people within the Congress who would like to see an investigation drag on to the point that the public forgets about it.
Yeah, that's very possible. Very possible.